In a terrible era of war between humans and demons, there were heroes with mighty power. These saviors of the world were called the strongest hero, the strongest saint, and the strongest warrior. Along with this trio of illustrious heroes was the protagonist of the future incredible story, a man who called himself a master of necromancy and liked to conduct various research. He was the strongest necromancer in the history of mankind and always relied on his abilities. But during another terrible battle with demons, the unbelievable happened. Necromancer Zako was defeated and his close friends heroes decided that he died. The three friends regretted such a serious loss, but they blamed the necromancer himself, who ran out ahead of everyone and took the brunt of the terrible demon's blow. In the end, Zako's body was simply left where it lay. But the necromancer himself, of course, did not die, and once again convinced of the stupidity of his friends. After all, it is after death that a real necromancer begins to live. As it turned out, Zako magic of resurrection, and since he is the strongest necromancer in this world, he will definitely be reborn as a Lich. The guy has been waiting for this moment for a long time and kept this forbidden spell in a strict secret. Zako personally heard his close friends, who decided to really leave him here alone and forget him, though they just had to wait until the spell worked and he could fight alongside them again. For a while, the illustrious heroes continued to argue about taking their comrade's body to the capital, but no one wanted to carry the corpse so far, and then deal with the funeral and make up some touching speeches. Zako, listening to the reasoning of his friends, was shocked, because he did not expect such a thing from people close to him. In the end, his friends decided to simply say that they had lost the necromancer in a terrible battle, and he would forever be in their memories. Zako wanted to scream at that moment, but he couldn't because the spell hadn't worked yet, and his old human body couldn't work. Zako had used a forbidden spell that could only be mastered after mastering necromancy and healing. And in this world, raising the dead is considered blasphemy and is of course forbidden. The reborn man is called a Lich and takes the form of the legendary founder of necromancy. His horrifying body, which has no flesh or skin, makes those who look at him lose their minds, because it is a truly horrifying sight for the average person. The reborn Zako could not come to terms with the fact that he had been abandoned by his loyal friends for many years. But then the revived Lich remembered that he always ate alone with himself anyway, and he was also often forced to work alone. But he hadn't paid attention to that before. Zako had sometimes guessed at the prejudice, but had always tried to turn a blind eye to it. But now the last act of his friends showed the true attitude to him, because they had abandoned him as an unnecessary thing, and now it was unclear what to do next. Zako Lich sat thinking about what had happened until late at night and realized that his friends really truly hated him, since they had abandoned his corpse and did not even take care of the funeral. Zako realized that he could not go back to the people and become their protector, because his appearance would not allow him to do so, and in the end people would fight against him. But suddenly a strange girl appeared nearby and immediately turned her attention to Lich. Zako did not notice the girl and continued to think that he cannot even enter the army of the King of Demons, because he fought for many years against him. But suddenly the stranger was even closer and frightened the newborn Lich. To Zako's surprise, she was not frightened at all by his appearance, but on the contrary admired him and asked if he was really resurrected. Zako confirmed the girl's assumption without asking who she was and why she was here. The stranger reminded that her name was Alice and she was one of the 6 demon generals leading the Demon King's army. But before she was just a ghost, Akaharego. Alice took a close look at the Lich and was fascinated by his appearance. But Zako tried to explain that he was not the Lich Alice had known before and there were distinct differences. But Alice was sure she was right and said that the more she looked at Zako, the more she realized that he was exactly what she was looking for. It all seemed delusional, for the Lich didn't even have a face to recognize. Zako pulled out of the girl's embrace and once again explained that he was not the one she was looking for. Alice took another close look and agreed completely calmly. But then the girl began to explain that Zako's mind was still too clouded, because he had just been resurrected and soon he would realize everything himself. Zako realized that the girl was thinking about the wrong thing and didn't understand his words. Then Alice advised her to listen and said that Zako is actually the strongest in the army of the King of Demons Necromancer, and rare researcher, which is honored by every representative of the dark forces. Zako realized who Alice was telling him about, and if they are talking about a real Lich, then this creature has a huge influence in the army of the Demon King, is a sworn enemy of mankind. Such a role in the future does not bode well, and Zako thought about getting rid of the annoying girl. But Alice was happier than ever and decided as soon as possible to inform the King of Demons about the resurrection of Lich. Zako immediately began to ask not to do this, because he was well aware that in fact is a hero who fought for humanity. and although outwardly he became like a demon, but inside he remains the same man as before. Alice explained that now after the resurrection Zako will have a lot of work, because at his request they saved all his materials and equipment. Zako was immediately interested in unexplored mysteries and the possibility of conducting research in the world of demons. Alice explained that these materials and equipment belonged to the founder of necromancy, and now after his rebirth he must resume his important work. Zako was delighted at this opportunity, for it opened up a new world for him to explore, although he was wary of being so close to the demonic world, as his human nature could be unraveled by other demons. But in this situation, the thirst for new research gradually outweighed the obligation to protect humanity, whose representatives so brazenly betrayed him and abandoned him as unwanted garbage. In the end, after a short reflection, Zako decided that in this world there is nothing more important than research and agreed to follow Alice. In confirmation of his words and aspirations, Zako called all people ordinary scum who can only betray. Alice of course agreed and said that she dreams of destroying all of humanity as soon as possible. Soon the girl brought the newborn Lich to his laboratory, where the master was joyfully greeted by little abominable servants. Zako was delighted by the joy of these creatures, because no one had ever before rejoiced at his appearance, and it caused real admiration. Alice explained that all the materials were quite old and should be checked before starting work. And also the girl showed a magic tablet in which she tried to all the list of existing materials and equipment. As it turned out, all the preserved things were on the bookshelves, and the equipment that only used in the past was in the museum. Alice explained that since she had updated all the technology, everything available in this lab was now up to date. Zako was delighted when he received Lich's secret notes and immediately started reading the diary. But to Zako's dismay, the diary only contained information about the Lich himself, and he wanted to know something more substantial and something that relates to the mysteries of the demonic world. But Alice reminded him that the main action now is to greet the Demon King, because it would be rude to ignore this meeting after his rebirth. After some thought, Zako explained that he did not want to inform the Demon King of his rebirth, at least for now. Alice was surprised by this decision and asked him to explain the reasoning behind it. Zako replied that if everyone knew about his resurrection, people would certainly increase their vigilance and become much stronger. Therefore, by such rash actions, they will make people prepare for trouble. Therefore, we must first complete important research, and then we can strike a powerful blow to humanity. Zako explained that he certainly wants to meet with the King of Demons, but for the good of all need to be patient and postpone this meeting at a more favorable time. So now it is very important to restrain his desires to deceive the enemy, and in any case do not meet with allies, because it would destroy the whole mystery of what is happening. Zako thought that his overly dramatic story should please Alice and not cause her any suspicion. As it turned out, the girl of course believed in all this nonsense and said that she was impressed by the foresight of the Lich, who had not changed a bit since the old days. Zako was happy with the result of communication, because he really did not want to reveal the true identity. After all, if the King of Demons will become aware of his resurrection, he will immediately try to use his power and send him into battle against humans, and the result of this battle could be the most deplorable for Zako. The former representative of the heroic team has always preferred battles to deep research and scientific achievements, so he needs to stay in the shadows as long as possible and not to arouse suspicion from the annoying Alice. Zako was delighted with the opportunity to do incredible research, because now all his work will go to the next generation without any sacrifice, and he will learn secrets that he did not even suspect before. Zako noticed that his emotions too embarrassed Alice and the demonic helpers and decided to be more restrained in the future. Besides, he has only recently been reborn and must realize that he is completely oblivious to Alice, so he must continue to act strange. It would also be helpful to find out what the Lich he was confused with was really like. Zako asked Alice that if his behavior had always been so strange that it caused concern. Alice admitted that in fact it had always been that way, and she was rarely able to guess Lich's emotions. Thus began days of fascinating research as a Lich representative of the Demon King's army. Alice was a capable assistant and diligently fulfilled all errands and requests. One day Zako asked to get him the black wool of the Beastmen, but the girl reminded that the race of Beastmen fights on the side of mankind and demons do not control them, so it will be difficult to get this wool. Zako explained that this element was extremely important to him, because he was going to use it as a catalyst for magic. Alice asked if it was impossible to replace the wool of the Beastmen with some other element that was more readily available. The girl reminded him that they had black dogs, which were walking everywhere and could also be a source of fur. Zako found out a lot about the life of his predecessor, and decided to convince the girl with his knowledge of necromancy. The Reborn Lich stated that only the original materials could allow for sufficient energy to create the necessary spells and effects. Alice had no idea what she was talking about and eventually promised to fulfill the request and get the wool of a real beastman. But Zako asked her to deliver not only the wool, but also the animal itself, so that it would become an endless source of wool and he wouldn't have to risk every time to get it. Alice thought about the solution to the problem and explained that the only way to get to the village of the Svikraludi was to go through the human front line. Of course, it would be very easy to invade an uncontrolled territory and cause chaos, but perhaps that would be too provocative. But even despite all these difficulties, Alice promised to fulfill her master's request and immediately rush into battle. But Zako decided to test his abilities on his own and go to the Beastmen settlement to get wool. The girl was incredibly surprised and asked if the Lich would stop hiding his rebirth. But Zako explained that he would use camouflage, and if he wore ordinary pants and helmet he would look like a simple skeleton. Alice appreciated the ingenious plan of her master and decided that it would be even funny. The girl reminded that she was the commander of the undead army and therefore it would not be difficult for her to introduce the Lich into her squad. However, one should realize that while on the front lines, one could be seriously injured. Zako explained that he had developed a physical nullification technique a few days ago, so in theory he could avoid any injuries. But it wasn't certain yet. Lich explained that he was already tired of theory and it was time to put theory into practice, because otherwise there would be no use for such theory. And he, as the author, would be very curious to use it in combat conditions. Zako was determined and decided to conduct a study with the wool of the zookeeper as soon as possible. After all, if he successfully discovered it, the Demon King's army would be one step closer to victory over humanity. Alice was delighted with such care for the army and promised to follow the Lich anywhere, because together they will be able to defeat any enemy, be it humans or their other allies. Meanwhile, the representatives of the Demon King's army suffered defeats from the man who had gained the ability to instantly destroy his opponents. The immortal soldiers of the Demon King's army absolutely did not understand why the Holy Maiden could so easily purify them, and they could not resist her. This unrivaled warrior was an undead killer, Saint Roselia, who easily destroyed all representatives of the demonic world in her path. Immortal skeletons could not resist the rapid attacks of this girl, who with just one touch of her hand destroyed all the undead in its path. Just at this moment, the newborn Lich Zako was about to embark on his first journey in a new role, and use the new powers that he was endowed with as a representative of the demonic world. As Zako was about to embark on his quest for the wool of the Beastmen, the war continued and he decided to become a regular skeleton in order to make his way to the Zeraludian village. With the help of Alice, Zako became an ordinary member of the demon army and was no different from any other skeleton. But just at this moment there was a problem that the newborn Lich did not realize. As it turned out, the military actions on this section of the front did not contribute to the successful advancement of the demonic army and everything turned into position tactics. But Zako did not want to waste time and decided to act as actively as possible. Looking around on the battlefield, Zako noticed that the human army is not doing anything unusual, although it was obvious that they may be plotting something cunning. Suddenly, a strange silhouette of a lone man emerged from the thick fog towards the Demon King's army, who began to read each skeleton in front of him in a monotonous voice. Gradually, the voice stopped louder and louder, and the silhouette grew larger and larger. And Zako of course remembered this man who was fearlessly approaching the surprised skeletons. The Holy Maiden, as if not noticing the huge army of the demonic king, calmly began to recite a prayer calling on the Lord to calm these pitiful souls. Zako already knew this girl and knew exactly what she was capable of, although he did not expect to see her in this place. Even the worst warriors of the demonic army who don't care about pain are only trash to this girl. She is called Saint Roselia, the slayer of the undead, and she was the strongest among all the heroes. All the representatives of the demonic army of course learned about this girl, and experienced real terror at the sight of this enemy. The skeleton commander ordered his subordinates not to be afraid and do not retreat, because they all had to die sooner or later for the Demon King. The skeleton commander was indeed quite brave and decided to be the first to confront Roselia, but his death was easy for the girl, and it only took a touch. After destroying the commander, all the other skeletons were shocked from such a lightning-fast cleansing and realized that in front of them was the power of an undead killer. The stunned skeleton decided to immediately avenge the death of his commander and rushed into a desperate attack. But Roselia easily handled the skeleton's attack and sent it back to where its commander was already. Everyone was shocked by such an easy victory of a fragile girl who only touched the skeleton, and it disappeared. The skeletons realized that the power of Roselia's prayer could destroy them all. Meanwhile, the girl hero continued to recite the prayer and call and lost souls to return to their destined place. After reading another prayer, Roselia decided to attack the skeletons, which caused panic in the ranks of the Demon King's army. The skeletons of course realized that the most important thing is not to let the girl touch them, but they were afraid of a new long-range attack. But everything turned out to be much scarier. Young maiden Roselia used her secret weapon and shouted that it was time for divine punishment. Roselia said that the cursed skeletons have no place in this world and it is an honor for them, because the god himself turned his attention to them to punish all of them personally. Zako, watching from the sidelines, was once again convinced of the girl's ruthlessness towards the undead. He himself was often present at Roselia's moments of rage and was always surprised at how ruthless she could be. Zako certainly did not want to be involved in saving the army of the Demon King, but Roselia was too much in the way of his goal and could not be ignored. Zako finally decided to use his knowledge and went to meet the ruthless girl. The Lich's assistants, as well as many skeletons, were shocked by such an act and tried to talk him down, but Zako was confident in his strength and continued to walk forward confidently. Roselia was also surprised at the unusual display of courage on the part of an ordinary skeleton. The girl advised him to run and reminded him that she could destroy him with a single touch. But Zako knew all these tricks perfectly well and approached the girl closely. Roselia felt such confidence from the representative of the demonic army for the first time and asked if he wanted to feel her touch. If at this moment there would have been skin on his bare skull, Zack would certainly have smiled. But in the current situation, he simply offered the girl to do the intended thing. Roselia was outraged by such insolence and immediately applied her sacred touch. The skeletons were once again horrified and decided that the sibling had really gone crazy since he had approached this deadly girl. Roselia, as usual, appealed to the god and called the demonic creature to return to the place intended for him. But this time absolutely nothing happened, and Zako asked the girl where her holy purification it was so proud of had gone. Roselia was shocked at her failure and couldn't believe that her holy purification didn't work on some ordinary skeleton. Zako was pleased to inform her that there was actually no so-called purification power in this world, and Roselia was only taking advantage of the fear of the others. This caused a real revolution in the minds of the army of skeletons, as well as the girl herself, who did not expect such insolence on the part of the enemy. Roselia instantly became furious and shouted that all this could not be, because she had destroyed more than 1,000 of the living dead with her unique power. Zako agreed with the hero girl's assertion, but also stated that of course she does drive out the undead, but for completely different reasons. The Reborn Lich explained that all the dead fools were indoctrinated to believe that Roselia's touch would cause them to die and ascend to heaven. The girl was outraged by Lich's words, but Zako offered to conduct an experiment and turned to the skeletons to find a volunteer. Most of the representatives of the demonic army were scared, but still there was one brave skeleton who decided to test this theory on himself. Zako promised the brave skeleton that he will not die and will continue to fight in the name of the Demon King. These words instilled confidence in the volunteer, and he really believed in his invulnerability. Zako invited Roselia to show all her abilities and prove her magical influence on the undead. The girl as usual touched and tried to destroy the skeleton, but to the surprise of everyone nothing happened and the skeleton soldier remained alive. At that moment, all the representatives of the demonic army realized that against them used only the power of suggestion in which they believed. Zako was pleased with the result of his experiment, because in this way he neutralized one of the most dangerous opponents. Zako said that this holy maiden had no power, and now she should be ashamed in front of everyone for her constant deception, because promising the skeletons to return to the intended place she simply deceived them by giving them false hope. The skeletons rejoiced because now they realized that this holy maiden is not so terrible, and they are absolutely nothing threatening. Roselia was indignant and angry at the revelation of her false powers and in despair struck one of the skeletons. But after a moment, the holy maiden herself realized that her holy exorcism was now no longer working. Roselia decided that all was not lost and reminded her of her ability to powder the undead. Zako agreed and felt the effects of Roselia's magical power. Most of the skeletons that had fallen under the influence of the magic were horribly damaged, but Zako hardly reacted to Roselia's influence. The girl hero was surprised by everything that was happening. Zako was completely healed from the damage, and Roselia could not believe that the undead had the ability to heal at the expense of dead relatives. This mysterious magic used by Zako looked disgusting, and I realized that it was an unusual skeleton. but something more. Zako finished regenerating with the help of the dead congeners, admitted that he was sorry if he seemed the most simple skeleton. Zako, for more daddy-born skeletal remains himself a remarkable throne, and declared that he was actually the Lich King of Skeletons. This caused Roselia to be both surprised and disgusted. The skeletons were as surprised as the girl and looked at their new king intently. Roselia tried to realize why such a strong demon king mage was in this forgotten together. After all, if you have here, it means that he is strongly interested in something. The girl hero decided that in front of her is a very serious opponent, because she had never seen before that the undead can heal with the help of dead brethren. All this aroused great interest in Roselia, who had always wanted to find out effective ways to destroy the undead. And now she had a great chance with the Skeleton King. The girl hero shouted that she was Saint Roselia and would immediately destroy all the undead in front of her. Zako was not at all impressed by these loud words and ordered the skeletons to immediately attack the girl. Roselia did not back down and began to strongly repel the skeletons' attacks. But after a few minutes, Roselia realized that there were too many opponents and she wouldn't be able to hold back serious attacks for long. But suddenly a whole pack of arrows flew towards the skeletons, and immediately a squad of soldiers appeared and came to Roselia's aid. The rider was surprised to see a huge skeleton sitting on a throne in the center, for this creature could only be the terrible Skeleton King. Roselia confirmed that it was indeed most likely the real Lich and ordered the general to line up the troops, but then decided to waste no time before attacking. Zako sent his subordinates forward again, and Roselia began to realize that the enemies wouldn't stop attacking because the Skeleton King was constantly reviving them. The girl hero admitted to herself that she didn't know how to stop such a strong enemy, and eventually ordered everyone to retreat. This amused the Skeleton King, and Zako asked if that was the end of it, because it was a lot of fun to fight. The human troops began to retreat quickly, leaving behind only dust and abandoned ammunition. But at this peaceful moment, Zack suddenly felt cold and tangled himself more tightly in his cloak. All the skeletons rejoiced in victory. After all, no one among them before could not even imagine that they could defeat the brave Roselia. All this happened thanks to Mr. Lich, and the skeletons began to praise the savior of the undead. Zako himself was happy to feel this exciting moment and feel the victory on the saintly Roselia. After all, it was obvious that this was indeed a great victory over the previously indestructible hero. The Skeleton King decided to go to a village inhabited by Beastmen to get the desired wool. Zako ordered his subordinates to attack the village and destroy all the Beastmen. The skeletons obeyed the order and rushed to the attack. But watching the actions of his subordinates, Zako decided that all these skeletons were real cylinders. In order to get the Beastmen's fur, Lich Zako disguised himself as an ordinary skeleton soldier and traveled to the front lines. Then there was a battle with the holy maiden Roselia, who was first defeated and had to flee the battlefield. Then after a brutal attack on the Beastmen settlement, all the inhabitants were wiped out. Alice was surprised by everything she saw and asked what had even happened here. The skeletons remembered after the battle that it wasn't necessary to kill everyone at all. Alice took all the blame and decided that she should make up for the mistake of her subordinates with her own life. But Lich asked her not to rush into such a decision and to listen to him. Zako explained to the worried girl that the dead could easily be brought back to life. Alice was surprised, for she had never before heard of magic that could revive an entire race of dead beings. Lich explained that it could theoretically be done, but he wasn't sure if he could do it right now. Then the Skeleton King began to cast some mysterious spell and tried to make all the unconquered souls of dead creatures appear to him. But the result was unexpected. Instead of the resurrected Beastmen, there was one huge creature, who angrily asked who was going to return the souls of the dead. One of the more intelligent skeletons shouted that the souls of the Beastmen had gathered together and turned into a huge beast. The Lich had realized this himself long ago, but still praised his subordinates' intellectual abilities. Meanwhile, the huge beast realized who was in front of him and declared that the undead were a terrible creature. The mighty beast was furious and accused Lich of not only killing the entire Zeraludian settlement, but also of manipulating their souls. Zako explained that he only wanted to use the Beastmen as experimental material so he would try to bring them back to life. But the huge beast did not believe this and demanded that they not lie to him. The huge and ferocious creature declared that all Beastmen would continue to pray to their gods for the complete destruction of the undead, and so there could be no cooperation between the enemies. Alice was frightened by the ferocious beast and asked Lich to explain what they would do next. Zako himself was not sure of the success of this experiment, and then admitted to Alice that such a resurrection would most likely not give the desired result. After all, resurrecting all dead beings requires their personal approval, but they don't want to do that and wish to go to their god. Alice decided that if this was indeed the case, then these creatures were not the best experimental material. But then the Skeleton King suddenly announced that he had a good idea. Lich realized that the Beastmen only needed to agree to his resurrection. But the huge beasts declared that he would never agree and betray his faith. Zako asked the Beastmen to think about what exactly the god had given them. After all, they had been dragged into a terrible war and ended up dying, and the god had never helped them save themselves. The beast of course did not know the answer to this question and stated that their prayers were not enough. Lich suggested that they discard the god who only saves creatures who pray enough, for prayers are not really the way to salvation. Salvation is a life filled with health, and that is what he is willing to offer to the entire race of Beastmen. Lich stated that he was willing to provide a stress-free life just so that the Beastmen could grow fine fur. Zako decided that he had come up with a great speech that should have influenced the Beastmen's choice. Lich then asked his assistant Alice to immediately provide a pre-prepared plan for the Beastmen support project. The girl guessed her master's intentions and quickly brought out a magic tablet. Alice began to tell him that under this plan all Beastmen would be provided with the best food for pets, and they would be guaranteed rest in any outings. The huge beast thought about such a tempting offer, and Lich hoped to hear a positive answer. But in the end, the huge beast said that he did not agree, because he did not trust the delusions of the creature that killed them. Besides, this relationship plan is too self-confident, and looks like a master's proposal to the slaves. Lich for some reason remembered at this moment his past hero friends who often reproached him for his creepy way of talking, and he realized what the mistake was. From two unpleasant memories, Lich's head suddenly cracked and Alice was terribly frightened. But Zako asked not to worry and explained that it was just the result of his memories. The mighty beast finally declared that he was no longer going to participate in this silly farce and asked to let all the skeletons die in peace. But the Skeleton King asked him not to rush into this decision and to listen to him. Zako thought about what could stop the Beastmen from making the terrible decision to die. The first thing the Skeleton King thought of was the creature's favorite food, for that was what would keep the Beastmen in the world of the living. In the end, the Skeleton King said that if the Beastmen agreed to be resurrected, they would not be able to gnaw on all those bones, of which he had an infinite number. This suggestion came as a surprise to the huge beast and it hesitated. After thinking for a bit, the huge beast said that Beastmen like to do this more than anything else in life. At this, the huge creature waved its tail in a friendly manner, which meant a positive reaction. The Lich decided to take this chance and explained that he no longer had the magical power to keep all the souls together, and so they only had 5 seconds to make the right decision. Zako began the report and the huge beast eventually gave a positive answer, promising to return to the world of the living. A few minutes later, the Lich completed the resurrection process, and a huge number of Beastmen felt alive again. Zako was pleased with the result of his revival of the Beastmen, but he had absolutely no magic power left. Zako decided that he was too late and needed to return while he still had strength. Alice was delighted with her master. She didn't even expect to be able to revive all the inhabitants of this settlement. But Zako at this moment felt a strong weakness, as if he was burned to the ground, and then lost consciousness and fell to the ground. The next morning, the Skeleton King woke up in his room and was surprised to find himself back, as he thought he would never be able to resurrect again. Zako was very curious about what would happen next, but now he was sure that he could continue his experiments. The main thing was to decide what to do first. First of all, he wanted to try a huge number of existing drugs, but it was necessary to experiment with dosages. But Zako was not worried about the negative results of the test subjects, because if someone dies, he will definitely be able to revive them. Lich then decided to talk to Alice. After Lich opened the doors, he was surprised by the sheer number of Beastmen. Alice was somewhere in the crowd and shouted that there were many more Beastmen than they expected and she had to place them in the lab. Then it became clear that the food stores were already empty and there was growing discontent among the hungry Beastmen. The representatives of the animal race were so hungry that they even began to gnaw on the bare bones of the Skeleton King himself. As a result, it was better to decide to solve the accumulated problems as quickly as possible and organize the first meeting to improve living conditions. Lich asked what had happened to the stock of animal feed, because he had not expected such a rapid depletion. As it turned out, the Beastmen had an appetite 10 times greater than previously thought, so they ate everything in one day. And the children of the Beastmen were so uncontrollable that they broke the research center while playing. These problems were the most difficult and needed immediate solutions. Alice advised to make a budget first and redirect the available funds to the highest priorities. Lich himself realized the importance of this issue, but he didn't know how to solve the problems with the budget. Alice advised to immediately meet with the King of Demons and ask for his help. Alice explained that in that case he would have to reveal his resurrection. Lich refused to meet with the Demon King after some thought, but then Zako realized that in this situation he had no other option but to meet with the Demon King. Lich offered to explain to the Demon King that he had been reborn for the sake of everyone's future, although in reality he was of course eager to help all of humanity and continue his unique research. Such a decision was approved by all his subordinates and Zako heard applause in his honor. Alice was happy about such a decision and promised to organize a meeting with the Demon King as soon as possible. To this end, the girl sent the little ghost forward with a message. The Lich asked Alice if she was confident in her abilities, for it was a difficult task. But the girl promised to fulfill everything in the best way, explaining everything with her incredible efficiency. The little ghost reached the Demon King's castle very quickly and delivered a message about Lich's resurrection and the need for a meeting. Meanwhile, Lich started to worry that the Demon King would be asked to return his money upon his return. But just at that moment, the services of the Supreme Ruler appeared and took Lich and Alice with them. A few seconds later, thanks to magical teleportation, Lich and Alice found themselves at a huge gate. Zako was fascinated by the magic of displacement and thought about the upcoming conversation, during which he wanted to discuss the budget problem. Just at that moment, the huge gate began to open and the excitement increased. The Demon King turned out to be a huge creature and he immediately greeted the revived Lich, which made him reminisce about the old days. Lich looked at the huge demon with astonishment, yet he was unsure if he felt he was the Demon King. But then the huge creature asked General Alice to leave the hall and leave him alone with Lich. This irritated the girl, but she couldn't argue. Zako realized that will be alone with the Demon King felt an incredible fear of the unknown. The Demon King turned to the Lich and approached him to scrutinize him. Proximity to such a huge creature caused the most unpleasant sensations, and the Lich tried hard to contain emotions. Zako thought that perhaps the girl left this room only because he was going to be killed. The Demon King noticed Lich's strange behavior and asked what was going on with him. But then suddenly a huge demonic creature began to shrink dramatically and eventually materialized into a demoness. Beautiful demonic girl fixing her hair said that they have not seen the Lich for a long time. The demoness began to actively stroke the Skeleton King's head and stated that he remained as smooth as ever. The girl was delighted with the encounter and even decided to take a few selfies with the revived Lich. Zako was stunned by such unusual behavior of a creature that was just a few minutes ago a huge demon. The demoness, enjoying the pictures, asked the Lich if such an encounter did not bring back any past memories for him. The beautiful demoness stated that she was now a success, and was now the cool boss of the army and demons. Lich had no idea what she was talking about, and of course he didn't know who the girl with the horns was. Lich had no memories of the past and was incredibly surprised that the Demon King was such a beautiful demoness. Lich admitted that he didn't really remember anything, and that it was all the results of the memory lapses associated with the resurrection. Demoness scrutinized Zako, giving the former man unpleasant feelings. She perfectly well understood that his excuse is not too plausible. But the demoness did not notice anything suspicious and simply wondered why Lich came to visit her, and whether he just wanted to talk and regain his old memories. The demoness then started showing old photos that were taken at the demon school. The girl explained that Lich often helped her with her lessons, and it became obvious that they were true friends. Lich decided to change the subject before all these other people's memories led to something bad. Zako explained his visit by wanting to get the necessary budget. The girl was disappointed by such directness, for she actually wanted to talk about the past some more. The demoness promised to allocate the necessary funds from the budget and meet Lich's needs. The demoness then stated that Lich didn't really have memory lapses, but that he had real amnesia since he was acting so strangely. Lich agreed with this and admitted that sometimes he himself is afraid to realize it. The demoness promised to help and reminded him that being undead was really hard. Lich thought at that moment that it would be difficult for him to communicate with this impulsive girl. The demoness explained that she had saved all the resources in the treasury and was willing to return them to Lich, although it was very funny since he was completely oblivious to the existence of his resources. The demoness then asked again that if Lich had really forgotten all the memories associated with her. Zako actually did not even know the name of this girl and only apologized for his amnesia. The demoness began to scrutinize Lich again, and he felt as if she suspected him of deception. But then the demonic girl stated that since Lich really did not remember anything, there was hardly anything that could be changed in this situation. Lich was afraid of the possible consequences and promised to try to remember something. The demoness began to smile, showing her sharp teeth, and then stated that they would try to put all the memories together. Lich was surprised at the kindness of this dangerous demoness, because he was probably in her eyes was a regular loser. At the same time, Zako realized that next to him was his main opponent, with whom he had been fighting for years. But now it was most important to get the key to the treasury. The demoness promised to hand over the key immediately, and began pulling it out of her bra. It was an odd vault for such an important item, but Lich watched the process with interest. But the demoness decided to add a little intrigue and only took out the key a little and then offered to let Lich take it himself. Zako was confused at the proximity to the girl's beautiful melons, but still he wanted to get his hands on that key and continue exploring. But after a few seconds, the girl laughed and stated that it was just a joke and handed over the key. The Lich was happy with this result and immediately calmed down. The beautiful demoness explained that he should go straight ahead and then turn right, and then he would be at the entrance to the treasury. Lich decided that he had a huge amount of money since it took a whole room. The demoness explained that Lich had taught her medicine for the demon army and also showed her a special system for making profit, and she was able to earn a lot of resources. Lich realized that a huge amount had accumulated over a long period of time, and the Demon King had shown great ability in managing his resources and possessions. The demoness explained that she hadn't fought all this time to go bankrupt and was now able to accumulate a huge amount of gold. Zako himself didn't understand economics well, but this Demon King did show good money-making abilities. The demoness advised to contact Alice with any other questions and explained that she herself had a lot of other work to do. Lich was delighted to meet with the King of Demons, because this creature was pleasant in communication and helped to solve problems. The girl promised to arrange a good sabapu during the next meeting. Lich of course did not understand what it is about, and Demons explained that this is a special kind of fashionable party that he will certainly like. During such parties, demons enjoy sweet food and enjoy watching the agony of the human race. The demoness told about how they consume most of the human prisoners of war during such parties. But if Lich had his own suggestions, he could of course offer entertainment to his own tastes. This shocked Zako and now felt a chilling fear from this girl. In parting, Lich of course said that he would look forward to the next meeting and the promised party. In fact, he was glad that he had managed to get a huge amount of money for his research, and now all that remained was to solve the problem with the labor force, as well as with the students. Lich told Alice about this problem, and the first creature that wanted to become a student of course was the little ghost. But Lich explained to the little ghost that he could not be an apprentice, and this upset the transparent creature. Lich explained to Alice that he needed apprentices to learn necromancy. In doing so, his apprentices would work as assistants, and eventually he would put together a fine group of necromancers. Alice thought about the problem, and the little ghost began to suggest again. Lich realized that there were many undead around him with too much free time and explained to the ghost that he was too stupid to be an apprentice. In the end, the Skeleton King decided to take apprentices from the available Beastmen, as they were alive and could do a good job. Alice supported the idea, and Lich suggested that the best apprentices would be the children of the Beastmen because they had a softer mind and were better able to absorb new information. Alice jokingly suggested that the master should take zombies as apprentices, as their heads are the softest among the undead because they rot constantly. Lich did not appreciate the assistant's sense of humor and explained that he needed a soft mind, not an empty head. Alice did not understand what exactly the master meant by the word children and asked for clarification. The Lich thought about it and explained that the age of the students should be about 15 years old, and that's exactly what he needed. Soon Alice had accomplished her task and led the teenagers to the master. Lich greeted the excited students and explained that they were in a laboratory and he would be teaching them the arcane arts. In doing so, they would be working with him on new research and developments in the field of necromancy. Lich then suggested that they waste no time and begin training immediately. But among the applicants for apprenticeship there was one girl who was too brave, and immediately declared that she was not going to study necromancy even if she had to die. Lich asked the girl to explain her attitude to necromancy and why she had such a negative attitude to this art. The future student explained that for her necromancy is too disgusting and suspicious, and that she finds it too dangerous and vile. Such words made Lich feel horrible emotions again, and his skull began to crack like glass. Alice instantly asked his master not to worry, because he would hurt himself that way. But Lich again remembered the hero team, whose members also spoke negatively about necromancy and spoke contemptuously about secrets. Alice realized her master's terrible situation and tried to use the little ghosts to bring Lich back to normal. Some time later, the Lich began to sense the world around him again and asked what had happened to him. Alice explained that it was most likely a blurred memory from the resurrection, though she wasn't sure. Lich then turned to the flustered girl and explained that of course he understood all the negative feelings against necromancy, but he would be able to explain how wonderful this science was. The fox explained that first of all, necromancy is a face-to-face encounter with life, and it is a very important and complex science. But the Beastman girl replied that it was all nonsense and Lich was just playing with other people's lives. Lich explained that this was a misjudgment. He then explained how in the human world, the lives of kings and aristocrats with their large finances are considered easy, but at the same time the lives of commoners and slaves are found to be hard. However, in necromancy, life is just life and the value of each person's life is exactly the same regardless of their financial status or status in society. And so the fair view of necromancy on human life cannot be denied. Lich stated that necromancers don't look down on life and they don't care who exactly a person is. Therefore, they can safely study and master the methods of reanimation, overcoming various prohibitions. All this is done for the sake of saving the human race and understanding the very principle of life. Then personally remember that it was thanks to necromancy that all beastmen were able to feel like living beings again. But the girl continued to stare angrily at the skeleton king, yet she no longer answered anything. The aggressive girl then reminded the Lich that he was responsible for their deaths, and it was certainly a fair accusation. The Lich apologized because he explained that he was really sorry for everything that had happened in their settlement. The girl also reminded him that they had to disobey their god because of it all. But then the girl cried dramatically and confessed that she was very happy to see all her compatriots alive, and now she was completely confused about what was good. Lich advised the girl to calm down and not to think about the past anymore, because now it was better to start studying necromancy and learn a lot of new things. But the girl was not sure about this decision, and Lich explained her negative attitude to necromancy by the fact that she just doesn't know anything about this art. And after she decides to study necromancy, and her attitude will change and she will realize many new things. Lich pointed to a small ghost who was also trying to study necromancy on his own, because it was an interesting science. But suddenly, Lich noticed something terrible in the window. A huge giant was looking at him from the street, which frightened the skeleton king. Lich quickly went outside and asked the giant why he had come to his house. But to the skeleton king's surprise, this huge creature asked for help and, judging by his voice, was very scared. The giant explained that his brother had been killed and he wanted to resurrect him with the help of necromancy. As it turned out, his brother's death had happened not too long ago, and Lich promised to try to help with the problem. The giant thanked him for his help and asked him not to waste any time. The resurrection of the giant happened perfectly and it made the giants really excited. Lich explained to the reanimated giant that he shouldn't worry about the pain, as he hadn't fully recovered from his death yet. Lich asked for a healing potion to be brought to him immediately. The Beastman girl was impressed by the necromancy abilities and, along with the other children, declared that she wanted to become the Lich's apprentice and learn this secret science. The girl explained that she also wanted to save living beings with necromancy, because it is wonderful when the dead can come back to life and hug their families. Then Lich explained that the problem in Sunday is not the power itself, but it is necessary to understand that it is the soul that uses the magical power. Therefore, everyone must learn the most basic concepts of necromancy before they can begin serious training. Then the giants asked for help to return the sword, which was an ancient relic. As it turned out, this very important sword had been stolen by Lila. Lich thought about this whole situation and about Lila. The aggressive Lila searched carefully for the giants and was surprised at their enormous size when she did find the creatures. Lila saw this as the perfect opportunity to put her new toy to good use. The giants, despite their incredible strength and sheer size, could not defend themselves against Lila's swift attack. The girl was delighted with the capability of her weapon and decided that the invincible Lila should continue on her path of destruction. Lich decided that it would be too problematic to resist this girl. Lich explained to the giants that Lila is a real problem, because this girl is very stupid and arrogant, but at the same time she has great strength. Due to her arrogance and strength, Lila always likes to mercilessly destroy her enemies. Lich inquired about the stolen sword and wanted to understand why Lila needed it. The giant explained that this sword is a precious treasure that is passed on by giants from generation to generation, and the inscription on the blade itself is a symbol of the leader of the giants, who has always led them thanks to his intelligence and strength. But a few days ago, the chief warlord of the giants was killed by Lila and stole this priceless blade. The huge giant began begging for help and crying. Lich demanded him to calm down immediately and threatened him with reprisal if he didn't stop screaming. The young students showed pity for the giant and asked Lich to help him, because he himself said that it was very important to help people even with his power of dead souls. Lich realized that now he had to do the right thing and finally promised to take the stolen blade from Lila. But as a reward, the Skeleton King asked to give him the body of the warlord of the giants. The giant agreed to such terms, showing absolute indifference to the body of the main warlord, and then offered to immediately escort Lich to Lila's lair. Lich was a little perturbed that the giant was giving him the hand he had just used to pick his nose. The giant apologized for his behavior, and Lich still decided to get to his destination on his own. Lich asked Alice to look after the house and the students while he was away. The girl promised to fulfill the errand and wait for her master's return. The young students also asked their teacher to return soon and wished him good luck. Lich himself wanted to deal with this problem as soon as possible and return to his research. After a while, Lich reached Lila's lair and watching her from afar made sure of her silly expression. The giant explained that this girl was trying to kill them all for some unknown reason, and Lich immediately noticed the huge sword next to Lila. The huge giant was surprised to see Lich using binoculars, because he was sure that using the Necromancer's magic was enough to do that. Lich advised him not to think about such things and promised to look into battle tactics. Meanwhile, Lila was thinking that she was tired of the monotonous giants and would like to meet a scrawny guy. Lich was surprised by this reference to himself and asked why Lila called him a scrawny guy. Lich stated to the girl that he would now be her opponent, and then admitted that he was indeed scrawny, for there was not a single piece of living flesh on him. Lila was surprised at Lich's sudden appearance and stated that it would be a real challenge to break all of his bones. Lich explained that such a stupid girl could only fight giants like herself, but that she would hardly be able to cope with such an intelligent opponent like him. This insult enraged Lila and she demanded that he shut up immediately. Lich, of course, realized that this girl had grown up in a very criminal world, and so for her to look a man in the eye meant at least picking a fight with him. Lila was very aggressive and promised to make Lich go away to fix his broken bones. Lila's first attack was repulsed, and this made the girl even more angry as she began to insult her bony opponent. Lila decided not to waste time and attacked Lich again. The girl's attack was swift and her blows were incredibly strong. Lich realized that it was very bad if it continued like this. The Skeleton King felt the monstrous power of this girl and realized that if her blows reached their target, he would definitely turn into a pile of bones. After a short pause, Lila attacked once again failed to hit Lich, who this time were unable to react to the girl's lightning-fast movements. Lila said that the reason for the bony opponent's defeat was a lack of calcium. The giants, watching the fight from a safe distance, could not believe that Lich was dead and were about to flee as far away as possible. But of course Lich did not die. He only resented the fact that it was not so easy to assemble himself piece by piece. But thanks to this activity, it became obvious to him that his rival was also a completely crazy girl. While Lich was recovering, Lila was about to head onward, but then her plans were disrupted. Lila didn't immediately believe that the bony opponent was still alive, because even a huge giant died after such a blow. Lila was also surprised to see the warlord of the giants, whom she had killed with her own hands a few days ago, alive. Lich asked the girl why she was so excited and then stated that he had specially summoned this giant from the underworld through his dead soul magic. Lich explained that he had purposely set himself up to find the giant's corpse and it was all part of his master plan. Lila praised her rival for his resourcefulness, for she was quite fond of such entertainment. Lich ordered the summoned giant to attack Lila and he quickly delivered powerful blows. The giants watching from afar watched with interest and hoped that after this Lila would never bother them again. But as it turned out, the girl was completely unaffected by the huge creature's powerful blows. Lila recalled that she had already killed a giant warlord once and could do it again without much effort. Lila had full confidence in her power and promised to blow the giant warlord to pieces this time so that he would never recover again. Lila used her incredible strength to pierce the giant warlord's chest, repeating her victory over him. Lich immediately used the magical healing of the dead and claimed to collect the souls of the fallen giants and further strengthen the giant warlord. Lich then stated that the giant warlord had a great brain unlike Lila, but the girl explained that Lich gives the impression of being a very dark, mysterious and strange guy. But despite this invincible, Lila will achieve her goal and teach the stupid skeleton to respect the strongest. After a long battle, both opponents were completely exhausted and lay side by side on the ground. Lila admitted that she really liked Lich because of his perseverance. Lich thanked her for such high praise, but the girl explained that they were not done fighting yet, for her heart was beating as strong as it had ever been. Lich asked not to use such banal flirting in this case, because Lila was not his type. But the girl finally decided to return the stolen sword and asked to meet with Lich, because it would be nice to repeat this great duel. Lich was surprised by the girl's behavior, who just left without explaining her true motives. But the most important thing was done and the stolen sword returned to its true owners. The huge giants explained that they had been watching the fight from a safe distance and now considered Lich their chief warlord. But the Skeleton King decided that this was nonsense, and he didn't need it at all. But the giants insisted on their own and explained that since Lich now held a huge blade, which previously belonged to the warlord of the giants, he was now also the warlord. Lich did not expect such a situation at all and pondered his answer. But the huge giants could not be persuaded and now Lich was their rightful commander, although the skeleton himself did not like this role at all. Back in his laboratory, Lich explained to Alice that, judging by the way events were developing, another hero would soon come and begin to show unwanted activity. Alice inquired about the events that worried her master so much. Lich explained that Lila would likely be next after Roselia, and he was concerned about the attention. Alice praised her master for bringing a second person to the squad, which was a remarkable achievement. Then Alice remembered that there was another character in the hero squad. But Lich immediately replied that he was sure of the 3 members of the hero squad. Just at that moment, Lich once again felt the painful memories of the past and realized that he would never get used to such an ordeal. Suddenly, the doors to the lab opened and a resurrected maid announced the impending trouble. This immediately alarmed everyone in the lab. As it turned out, the dragon had killed another hero and it was a complete surprise for Lich and Alice. Lich was incredibly happy and suggested that everyone drink well and have a great party. All subordinates of course supported the decision of their master and with pleasure began to celebrate the wonderful event. The Supreme Demoness also joined the party and rejoiced at the death of the hero. Demoness reported a significant increase in stock value due to recent successful transactions and it will bring a lot of money. Lich decided to make a request to the Demoness, who was pleased with the recent events. Lich asked her to give him the body of the dead hero for new interesting experiments. The Demoness of course agreed and soon the hero's body came back to life. Lich's experiment was a complete success and he applied the secret art of necromancy when Lich could inhabit and manipulate the body of a dead man. It was a technique of manipulating the dead body at a considerable distance, and since this is a very important case, Lich used the manipulation twice. Lich was happy with this result because now he could control his former friends. To begin with, Lich began to manipulate Lance and paid special attention to the hero, who had recently been killed by a dragon. The resurrected hero considered this girl to be Queen Lanza. This nickname the girl received most likely because of their close relationship and they treated each other well. The resurrected hero came and going to pick up important materials, but it seemed much harder with this girl. Lanza eventually stopped crying and asked if he was really a hero, but the hero tried to pull out of the hug, which surprised the girl. Lanza explained that he usually hugged and kissed his queen. Lich wondered at that moment what these idiots were doing all the time they were together. The hero apologized to the girl and explained that he simply could not utter a word in front of her charms, because it is almost impossible to resist such beauty. Lich even decided at that moment that he had overdone it with his compliments. Lance was impressed by such wonderful words, but then the hero explained that he needed to deliver a package to the house of a friend and it should be done as soon as possible. But Lanza decided to go along with her hero and did not forget to get rid of it in any way. Through manipulation, Lich sent the hero to his former home, where he lived before he reincarnated into a royal skeleton. The hero explained to Lance that it was his Necromancer buddy's house and he needed to bring his important items often. The girl was impressed by the huge room where there were many books. Lanza then asked the hero if the art of necromancy could revive people who were already dead. Lich explained that theoretically it could, but the deceased must have been dead for no more than a day. Lanza asked if it was possible to revive bad people as well. But of course for necromancy there was no difference between good and bad people. Then the girl asked to tell about other abilities of necromancy. The hero explained that thanks to this secret science you can attack enemies, possess other people's corpses and many other things. Lance listened attentively and marveled at such possibilities. Lich was so fascinated by the story that he even thought later how much he told this girl. But Lance really liked the information about necromancy. Why suddenly the girl looked at the guy carefully and asked if he really wasn't the hero. Lich of course realized his mistake and began to explain that if Lance was confused by his knowledge of necromancy, He had recently learned this science. But the girl explained that usually no one ever tells her anything, and all her questions were banally ignored, and that's how the real hero was. The girl immediately remembered all her acquaintances who just promised to talk sometime later, but never kept their promises. And now the new hero was the first to talk about something in such detail. The girl was very happy about this communication and asked her hero to teach her the art of necromancy. Lich with the help of the dead hero to fulfill this request. At all it looked very strange. The guy explained that it was too late now and needed to get back before the sun set. Lanza agreed and asked to be allowed to take some books to read at home. Lanza of course chose a necromancy book with an overly provocative cover. Once home, Lanza immediately met her father Bishop, who was interested in the strange book in his daughter's hands. The bishop was outraged when he realized what book was in Lanza's possession and decided to have a serious talk with his daughter. In the end, the cruel servants of the church decided to use God's punishment against this young girl, and were defeated by the Necromancer. Meanwhile, Lich continued to manipulate. The hero was pleased that he was able to take most of the documents, and it did not take long. Moving through the city, Lich overheard a random conversation of the locals and learned that Mrs. Lance was brutally executed on the orders of her own father. Her girlfriend was accused of being connected to necromancy and was unable to escape. Lich was shocked by such cruelty of the church servants and asked to tell him more about Lance's death. The street boys explained that according to rumors this girl disobeyed God and began to study necromancy, and now her body is in the church to be purified by the priests. Lich decided to immediately find the church and try to resurrect the girl who died because of him. The hero quickly found his way to the church, and the priests immediately explained to him that they had punished the evil necromancer, and no one could imagine that this girl used her position and secretly studied forbidden science. But Lich was not going to listen to all this nonsense and immediately applied resurrection to Lance. The church attendants were shocked that the heroes turned out to be a necromancer and immediately ordered to capture him, because in their opinion he went crazy. But Lich took the girl with him and decided to leave the city as soon as possible. Lich was not going to be in such a situation and explained to the resurrected Lance that they should run as far away as possible. But the familiar silhouette of Roselia appeared on the way and was about to interfere with that plan. Lich didn't expect to meet the hero girl so quickly, and that added even more problems. Roselia immediately stated that she was facing the vile Lich, who had probably used necromancy and taken possession of the hero's corpse to deceive the naive Lance. Roselia promised to destroy the necromancer immediately and stop desecrating the god. Lanza asked Roselia to listen to her and admitted that she had indeed gone against the god, but she wasn't going to stop anyone or do anything bad. Lanza explained that necromancy, depending on how it is used, can help ordinary people. These words made Roselia think, and she didn't immediately attack. Suddenly Roselia agreed with Lanza and recognized that everything depends on how to use magic, and then asked what the girl had already learned. But all this was just a trick on the part of the hero's girlfriend, and Roselia promised to destroy the god's enemies immediately. Lance once again tried to talk and convince Roselia, and Lich suggested to attack. Lich at this point remembered that they were once true friends but still attacked with the instant death spell. But Roselia fell down and applied a fortification that allowed her to repel the dark magic with her spirit power. Roselia said that such a spell would not work against divine defenses, but Lich of course knew that it was not an ordinary spell. Roselia wasted no time and tried to deliver a devastating blow to the resurrected hero, but Lich was able to deftly dodge. Roselia's blow hit the wall, which was instantly covered with terrible cracks from the incredible force. Roselia was surprised, because she couldn't understand how Lich could dodge Faith's fist, because she had used a divine strike. Lich wondered what this had to do with faith in a god. Lich reminded Roselia that the body of the hero and her comrade was in front of her. Roselia tried not to listen to the Lich's words and promised to free her friend's body from the curse of the terrible necromancer. The girl hero tried to make a sudden strong blow with the foot of faith, and this time the Lich could not dodge and felt the full force of the powerful blow. Lance asked her new friend to get up immediately and be strong, but from such an injury, Lich regained his true form. Roselia advised Lanza to take a close look at this horrible creature and answer if she wanted to continue studying necromancy. Lance didn't want to listen to Roselia and hugged Lich, saying that she didn't care what he looked like, because she trusted him and wasn't afraid of necromancy. Roselia had given up hope of bringing Lance back to her side and promised to destroy them both if she did. But at that moment Lila suddenly appeared and decided to protect her bony friend. Lila blocked Roselia's punch and promised to destroy her if she continued to attack her friends. Roselia was surprised by the appearance of a strange stranger and she asked who she even was. Lanza was surprised by the appearance of the strange protector, but Lila advised to immediately run away while she restrained Roselia. Roselia as usual promised her opponent total annihilation for daring to oppose the divine powers. But Lila didn't take all this religious nonsense and explained to her rival that she just liked to fight strong people. Lich was very happy about Lila's unexpected appearance and hurriedly ran away far away. The two belligerent women would have to sort out who was the stronger of the two. Lich said that he was immediately returning to the territory of the demons and advised Lance to go to his home. But the young girl didn't want to be alone and grabbed Lich's arm. Like a frightened child, Lance asked her to come with him, and Lich thought at that moment how annoying she was. Lance's request to take her with him came as a surprise to Lich, and he had to make the right decision again. Lich explained that he wasn't happy about the request, because if he had so much power, he would want to use it for research. But Lance stated 3 good reasons why she asked to take her to the demon lands. First, the girl explained that of course it was impossible, but after she had been resurrected there was no place for her in the old world. Lich explained that in demon territory a human girl would surely be met with hostility, and therefore she would feel the negative influence from all sides. It would be better for Mind to find on her own a new place for herself in this world. But Lanza was not going to back down and stated that she wanted to study necromancy and become part of the demonic world. Lich was surprised by such a desire of a young girl and remembered how negatively his former friends were treated by his former necromancy heroes and constantly teased him. This became a real celebration for Lich, because now the young girl seriously wanted to study necromancy, which meant that all the time spent on raising the status of not Team 1 was not in vain and he could get a real follower. Eventually Lich, realizing the positive prospects, agreed to take Lanza with him. Lich thought about how he could explain the appearance of a young human girl to the other demons, but Layla advised her new friend to just keep everyone quiet. Lich had not expected Layla to return so quickly, for he had hoped that this girl would fight Roselia for a long time. Lich asked for an immediate explanation of what happened to Roselia and how Layla was able to catch up with them so quickly. Layla was outraged at this disrespect, as she hated hearing questions about the other girl, and explained that when she was jealous she could be very cruel. Lich was outraged and wanted to finish off the insolent girl at that moment. Layla explained that she was able to defeat the stupid follower from the church and most likely shattered all her bones, and now she won't be able to move until she heals. Roselia was really shocked at Layla's incredible strength and tried to get up after the heavy defeat. Lich didn't even expect how easily Layla could defeat Roselia. But Layla explained that this fight could be called a draw, because she too had severe injuries after the fight. Lich asked why she was being so calm then. Layla explained that because of her fighting spirit, she could heal her wounds quickly. This surprised Lich, as Layla's invulnerability was truly admirable. Layla then explained that she too wanted to go with them into demon territory, but Lich advised her to go back home and not bother him anymore. Lich stated that he was absolutely not going to take such an aggressive and unstable woman with him. But Layla only snorted angrily in response, and then gave her bony friend a nasty kick in the leg. Layla reminded him that she could no longer return to the human world because of her relationship with Lich, and if he refused to take her with him, she would rip his bald skull off. Lich didn't want to take Layla with him and advised her to survive on her own. But Layla admitted that she was very interested in Lich because he was able to fight with her on equal terms, which meant that they would have more fun together. Lanza thought at that moment that Layla had fallen in love with Lich, and if so, he should definitely reciprocate the girl's feelings. But Lich replied that he has absolutely no fun together with Layla because she is noisy and unstable. This triggered a fit of aggression from Layla and she instantly lashed out at her bony friend. Lich started asking Lance to help him, but the girl showed female solidarity and pretended not to hear Lich. There was a horrible feeling on Lila's part after the brutal beating, but it made Lich change his mind and he asked the girls if they really wanted to go with him. Lila and Lanza were about to back out of their goal and were glad that they were able to convince Lich. The bony necromancer decided that Lanza's naivety and simplicity could bring a new breath of fresh air to necromancy, and Layla would be perfect as a bodyguard for the vulnerable Lanza. As a result, Lich offered to follow him, and after they reached the demon's territory, Lich explained to his charges that from today, these two strange girls become their companions and should be befriended. Lance was surprised at how quickly they had reached the demon territory, but Lich explained that he had to use the precious magic pages to do so and reminded them that it was now important to make friends with the locals. Alice was outraged and demanded an immediate explanation as to why Lich had brought along a human queen, and the strongest human warrior, as it was against demonic principles. Lich explained that the two girls had simply followed him on their own and he couldn't do anything about it. But Alice asked him not to make such trivial excuses because it looked very silly. Lich promised that there would be no problem with the two girls and reminded how they were able to get along normally with a large number of beastmen. But Alice explained that beastmen weren't too different from demons and they didn't fight back as much as normal humans. Lich decided that it would be enough to just talk to the demonic world representatives and then they would understand his decision to take the humans with him. Lich's subordinates were incredibly surprised at the appearance of two living girls and some of them immediately wanted to massacre them. Lila was marveled at the sheer number of all sorts of monsters and asked if she could kill some for practice. But Lich asked her to keep her cool and behave as calmly as possible, because he didn't want to cause conflicts on the first day. Lanza decided to explain to the skeletons and zombies her desire to study necromancy with them and said that she was happy to make new acquaintances. But suddenly the demonic creatures treated the human queen well and even offered her help and various sweets. Lich decided that all these zombies and skeletons are real idiots, since so quickly surrendered to the influence of man. But unlike the others, the giants promised not to be so frivolous, because they know very well who Lila is. The huge giants decided to take a chance and promised to immediately take revenge on Lila for all her actions against the giants. Lich immediately decided to intervene in the situation. Lila of course decided to fight the giants and offered them a fair one-on-one duel. Lich realized that the best solution in this situation would be to leave the aggressive idiots to deal with each other and go to the lab. Afterward, Lich introduced Lanza to his top student Crimson. I explained that they would be studying necromancy together. Lanza was confused at her new acquaintance with the Beastman girl, but all greeted her new friend. But Crimson did not reciprocate and stated that she had absolutely no intention of being friends with a stupid human girl. Lich didn't expect this turn of events and realized that such a relationship could be a problem. Alice came to the rescue and explained to Crimson that they should become friends immediately. Lanza asked Crimson why she was being so aggressive, since this was the first time they were seeing each other. Crimson recalled how the royals never thought of them as mere living beings, since they were too selfish and arrogant. Lich stated that he was not going to tolerate beings fighting over who was going to learn the art of necromancy together, for it would hurt the learning process and slow it down. Crimson continued to exchange people in their indifference and reminded them that no one had come to their aid during the attack on their village. Lich agreed with the Beastman girl at this point, for such treachery could not be forgiven. Lanza apologized for the humans' behavior and explained that she didn't know about all these events and she wanted to learn more about the Beastman race so she could become a friend. These words had an effect on Crimson and she agreed to become friends, calling Lanza a very kind person. Lich was happy to see such a warming in the two students' relationship, though they were surprised to see such a quick reconciliation. Just then, an angry Lila returned and accused Lich of leaving her alone with the giants, but Lich asked her to stay away from his lab, because she destroys everything she touches. Lich asked why Lila had the giant's huge sword in her hands again. The girl told how she was able to retrieve it again, and then she was appointed to the position of General of the Giants. Lila boasted that now she had power and material wealth in her hands, and this alarmed Lich, for it was difficult to foresee the girl's actions. But after a while the situation calmed down and Lich was busy teaching necromancy. After the tiring lessons, the students were always well fed and restored their strength, as well as always held festivals dedicated to birthdays. As it turned out, Lila was the most fond of both celebrations and good food. After some time, the first meeting on improvement of living conditions was organized, where it turned out that the budget was completely exhausted. Lich asked to explain where all the money had gone in such a short period of time. Lanza explained that almost everything had been spent to feed the giant general Lila. Everyone, of course, resented the appearance of Lila, who was also in all the food supplies and showed aggression in case someone contradicted her. Also, everyone remembered that it was Lich who had brought this horrible character to the lab. Alice, meanwhile, explained in detail how much resources go into maintaining Lila, and then asked about future actions. Lich suggested killing Lila as it was the easiest solution to the problem. But everyone realized that first of all Lila was a giant general and killing her would affect the reputation of Lich and his subordinates. But at the same time, everyone was tired of keeping this girl at a loss. As a result, Lich decided to apply the idea and use food as bait. Lila, of course, fell for this trick and went on a pre-prepared path of food. At the same time, the girl resented how it was possible to forget food in such a place. Lich, along with Alice and the others, watched Layla's actions and wondered how she could even react to such a stupid trap. But then Lich remembered that she had always been very stupid and now they were taking advantage of that. After a while, Lila met a stranger on her path who was following along thanks to the information she had received. Layla was surprised by the unexpected encounter with the stranger who immediately accused her of betrayal. The powerful guy with a spear stated that he was the only one of the new team of heroes and his name was Young and that's why he came here to destroy Layla for her betrayal. Young wanted a thank you from Lady Roselia and was determined to punish Layla. Alice explained that she had indeed heard about how Roselia had created a new team of heroes, but such a vile type was a surprise. Lich admitted that he was the one who had spread the word that Layla was coming to the place today and had instigated the fight. Lich stated that if that bald guy with the spear destroyed Layla, they would immediately solve all the budget problems. Alice agreed on the efficacy of such a solution and called it a sinister plan. Meanwhile, Layla prepared herself for battle and was not going to give up easily in front of some stranger with a spear at all. But the cocky spearman only laughed and said that a mediocrity like Layla didn't deserve to be feared. Jung said that the decisive factor in this battle would be distance, and the difference between spear and fists was obvious. So he would win despite Layla's resistance. But the girl stated that she too has a fine weapon. But Jung didn't take it seriously and said that he would hardly be afraid of a weapon that fits in his pocket. But Layla showed her huge sword presented by the giants and it caused a real shock to Jung, who now felt the uselessness of his spear. But even in this situation, the new hero decided not to back down for the sake of Mrs. Roselia. Layla was eager to fight her opponent as quickly as possible, because now she could punish Jung for his arrogance. But the bald hero advised Layla not to rely too much on his weapon, because he is a real hero and Mistress Roselia has given him powers. But after a few minutes, the cocky hero felt the cold ground with his body, and was no longer going to continue fighting the girl. Layla was satisfied with the fun entertainment, although this duel turned out to be too fast. Alice reported the complete failure of Lich's plan. This was outrageous, for Layla had an invincible body, and a terrible appetite and was almost impossible to kill. Lich realized that there was no way he could deal with this problem and so they should just accept and coexist with this insufferable girl who was more like a monster. Lich then he asked Alice how they were going to deal with the budget problem now. Alice advised to seek help from the Demon Lord, because there is no other option to solve the problem. Lich remembered that in the case of the appearance of the Beastmen, the Demon Lord really helped them to cope with the funding and perhaps they should ask for help again. But Lich was more annoyed by the Demon Lord's extroversion than anything else and he wasn't too keen on meeting her again. Lich was still hesitant to go to meet the Demon Lord and tried to find another solution to the problem. Alice saw his lord's indecisiveness and advised him to take everything seriously and pull himself together. Unexpectedly, the maid burst into the lab again and as usual reported breaking news. Usually this girl told about bad events and Lich cautiously asked what had happened. As it turned out, the scouts had discovered something strange and so Lich should immediately see what was going on himself. Lich immediately realized that there was a real golem in front of them. Alice asked him to explain more as it was the first time she had seen such a creature. Lich explained that a golem is a wise servant created to perform a variety of tasks, but the technology of creating these creatures is still shrouded in mystery. Moreover, he had never personally seen such a model and it is most likely a real rarity. Lich asked where they found this unique golem and as it turned out the scouts found a strange creature during the survey of ancient ruins and immediately decided to show it to the master. Lich did not understand at all what kind of ancient ruins, where you can find a golem in good condition. And if one searched more carefully, it might be possible to discover unknown technologies and valuable materials among these abandoned ruins. Lich hoped to discover something useful to solve Layla's feeding problem. Lich decided not to waste any time and ordered Alice to begin preparations for field work immediately. Lich felt the urge for new explorations and travels and ordered to go to the ancient ruins. But in doing so, Lich forgot about the golem, which continued to remain in the laboratory. Lich decided to find unknown technologies that lurk in the ancient ruins. Crimson was dissatisfied with the situation, as she had expected to go with Lanza, not with a stupid and annoying ghost. But Lich explained that unlike Svein, Lance's physical abilities were too small and it would be too dangerous for her to go on such a trip, so she stayed home. And when they returned, Crimson could tell her friend all about what was going on in the ancient ruins. Crimson agreed with her teacher and didn't argue. As it turned out, there were guards at the entrance to the ancient ruins and apparently the area was guarded by humans, as the ancient ruins were located on the border between the territory of humans and demons. Crimson began to worry and asked what would happen if they were discovered. But Lich promised that it wouldn't be a problem. Lich instantly approached the guards, who weren't expecting to see Lich, and used an instant kill spell on the soldiers. Crimson was horrified by such cruelty and asked why he had to kill all those people. After all, they could have just neutralized the soldiers in another way and not taken their lives. But Lich explained that those stupid soldiers had attacked him and interfered with an important research. The girl still didn't understand the need to act so cruelly and regretted the deaths of the soldiers. Lich immediately remembered the words of Alice, who asked during the trip not to make the little girl cry, because if it happened, the blame would be completely on him. And in general, during this journey, Lich should show at least a little sympathy and understanding. Lich explained to Crimson that if she was so worried about the deaths of the soldiers, she could use the resurrection spell he had taught her and bring the dead people back to life when they returned from the ruins. That way the soldiers wouldn't be able to interfere with their journey. Lich then advised them not to waste time and followed them into the ancient ruins. In doing so, he stated that the main purpose of this journey is to discover the golem manual. After all, although golems have similarities with the theory of necromancy, where an immortal soul is incarnated into a lifeless object, but at the same time golems have a lot of differences. Therefore, it is very important to find an instruction manual to understand all these nuances and differences. In addition, if many other golems can be found, it will be possible to use these creatures as a labor force, and it will save money on labor and food. Crimson agreed that these were important goals for such a dangerous journey. So Lich and his companions traveled a considerable area in the ancient ruins and encountered dangerous and deadly traps. But thanks to a small and silly ghost managed to detect in advance all the traps and not get hurt. After a while, the team explored the warehouse with golems, which was more like a real factory for the production of these soulless creatures. Quickly surveyed the territory of the factory, Lich was able to find the necessary manual on the operation of golems and immediately began to study it. The information obtained surprised the bony researcher very much, because it looked like all golems had their own personality and could share their thoughts through a special network. Crimson didn't quite understand what the problem was and asked to explain more. Lich explained that such a communication network allows each golem to instantly share its experiences with the rest of its brethren. And if 1,000 golems will accumulate experience, then their ability to learn will increase 1,000-fold. Moreover, these soulless creatures shared information in real time, allowing them to act in perfect harmony with each other. Each of the golems acted separately and simultaneously communicated with the rest of this soulless race. And if they gained popularity in society, the modern military and customs of life would become instantly obsolete. Crimson advised to seal this dangerous thing so that irreparable events would not happen. But Lich explained that the task of a true explorer is to always move forward, even if his life is in danger. Meanwhile, the golem suddenly became active and began communicating with the Lich. The soulless creature took the Skeleton King as a new client and promised that now the life of the golem's owner would become much more beautiful. But first you need to register as a new user, after that you can use all the functions of the golem. Lich was delighted with the beautiful autonomous voice recognition program, because such technology could greatly improve his abilities. Lich greeted the golem and introduced himself. The golem responded in a monotone voice, informing him of the user's change. But as it turned out, the soulless golem misunderstood Lich's name and registered the entire phrase as the username, which angered the bony researcher. As a result, Lich used an instant kill spell and tried to get rid of the stupid golem. But Crimson explained that it was silly to use death magic because it wouldn't work against golems. Lich stated that the golem was just silly junk, but Crimson advised him not to add any extra phrases besides his name when registering, because he was not talking to a human, but to a machine that took everything literally. In this case, the username could be changed at any time. And to use the golem you just need to listen to it and you can continue experiments. The golem then asked for a strong password, which Lich chose the word knowledge as his password. But the increasingly annoyed golem replied that this was not a suitable password. The golem explained that a password of more than 10,000 characters was needed to strengthen security. This finally deprived Lich of his composure and he decided to destroy the soulless creature immediately. Crimson this time decided not to interfere, because such behavior golem annoyed even her. Lich grabbed the golem with great pleasure and threw it against the ground. Lich was disappointed with the result of the research, because he had expected to use a highly intelligent creature, but the golem turned out to be a stupid invention that only wasted his time. Thanks to the damaged communication network, the golem was able to inform all other soulless creatures that any demon or human is dangerous and must be destroyed. All golems instantly reacted to the information received and declared an emergency situation through the communication network. choosing for themselves the enemy of humans and demons. After a while there was activation of a special program for the extermination of demons and humans. After that the stupid golems turned into real killing machines. Lich decided to immediately return to the laboratory, but the young very Price remembered the need to resurrect the dead soldiers, which caused even more irritation to his teacher. But suddenly an excited Alice ran out to meet him and reported the terrible events. Alice explained that for unknown reasons, the golem had gotten out of control and killed Lanza. Shortly before Lich and his squad found the warehouse with the golems, young Lanza had been looking at the golem with interest. The naive girl liked the small soulless creature very much and eventually managed to activate the golem. Lanza was delighted with the new toy and even managed to think of a name for the golem. But the golem only looked at the new user with interest. Suddenly, the golem thanked the girl for the name and it made Lanza really excited. The girl immediately introduced herself and tried to communicate with the golem. Lanza immediately began to explain to her new friend that she should be friends. But just at that moment there were unforeseen events in the warehouse golems and activated the program of extermination of demons and humans. Lanza immediately noticed the strange behavior of her new soulless friend and felt threatened by her. The girl immediately tried to escape. The golem went into full extermination mode instantly, and the soulless creature immediately attacked the frightened Lanza. Alice finished her story and regretfully admitted that young Lance had taken the brunt of the damage and died. Lich was shocked and suggested they hurry back to the lab. Crimson reminded the guards of the dead, but Lich said that it didn't matter now and they should hurry home to resurrect Lanza in time. Lich didn't want to argue and barked that it was an order and had to be obeyed. Alice and the ghost helped shorten the distance to the lab with their ability to fly. Alice mentally praised the Lich for his concern, for he had specifically ordered the immediate return to lessen the guilt of Crimson, who sincerely wanted to resurrect the dead soldiers. Lich, on the other hand, was actually worried about his lab and hoped that the cursed golem hadn't destroyed all of his accomplishments. After the research team returned home, Lich immediately resurrected Lanza and then began to rejoice because his lab had not been damaged in the attack. Lanza, meanwhile, was recovering, and one of the ghost servants reported how Lila had defeated the golem. Lich found Lila outside next to the destroyed golem. The girl's appearance suggested that this victory had not come easily to her. Lich praised Lila for her excellent work, but the girl admitted that it was difficult for her to defeat this creature, although she was stronger than this soulless puppet. But as it turned out, the golem had not yet been destroyed and Lich decided to fix it immediately. Unexpectedly, Lance stood up for the soulless doll and asked her not to kill her friend Go. Alice reminded the young girl that the golem had killed her, but Lance stated that the golem's aggression must have an explanation. Suddenly, the golem began to speak and called Lanza her friend. The soulless Go then explained that one of the golems had been attacked and therefore activated the destruction mode for all golems due to the communication network. Lich guessed that he was the one who activated that horrible destruction mode, but decided to keep silent about it. Golem Go apologized for killing her only friend, but Lanza replied that it was okay and she was alive. Lanza called the golem her good friend and promised to watch over him and take care of him. Lich was shocked by such a silly situation, asked not to spoil this wonderful moment. But at that moment a skeleton servant appeared, and as usual Lich heard the bad news about how from the direction of the ancient ruins a huge number of golems are moving towards his laboratory. Golem Go explained that all her kin were now under the influence of a program of extermination of humans and demons, and they would never stop until they had killed all the human demons. All of Lich's subordinates decided that now they would all die for the golems were too many to defeat. Lich asked Lila to leave immediately and fight the invading golems, but the super strong girl refused, recalling her fatigue after the last battle. Such a response made Lich foul-mouthed, for he didn't know how to resist the golems. Suddenly, Golem Go stepped forward and asked to remember only good things about her. Go promised to protect her friend Lansu and try to stop the attack of the golems. The young and naive girl didn't want to lose her new friend, but Go showed self-sacrifice and exploded, destroying the rest of the soulless golems. Many fragments from the mechanical creature scattered in all directions. Lance picked up the remaining parts from Go and promised to never forget her friend, who had shown real humanity and a soul. But Lich, as usual, started talking at the wrong time and said that a soul can't be in an ordinary metal part, and especially no one knows the origin of the golems. Lich also reminded about the existence of necromancy, but Alice asked immediately to shut up and disappoint Lance even more. But at that moment, a strange stranger entered and stated that she was a messenger from the dragon tribe and had come to communicate with Lich. Thus the attack of numerous golems ended with the mechanical girl goes self-destruction. A week had passed since then, and Lich continued to give his necromancy lessons. Lance's spirits were even stronger than before, as she was truly impressed by her new friend's self-sacrifice. And while Lich couldn't boast of outstanding research results, he was still able to delve into one study that he really wanted to do. As it turned out, the Demon Lord's army was the best, and when Lich completely abandoned human life at first he worried about what would happen to him next. But as it turned out, living among the various demons was the most fun time of his life. At the same time, Lich did not understand why the messenger of the dragon tribe Annabelle was always with him and did not want to go anywhere. Although Lich immediately refused her offer and tried to chase Annabelle back home, the girl continued to stay in his house. Annabelle constantly reminded that Lich didn't even want to listen to her properly, but the bony teacher ignored a serious conversation in every possible way. Annabelle repeatedly demanded to take away the body of the hero that Lich had killed, but it was all too annoying, and the necromancy teacher kept saying that he had absolutely no interest in it. Annabelle was a very persistent girl and reminded that Lich is simply obliged to take away the cases of killed heroes, because it is an ancient rule of the demonic world. Lich did not give up and explained that he does not care about that cursed body, and Annabelle herself can do whatever she wants with it. Annabelle was angered by Lich's refusal and promised to make him take the dead hero's body by force. Lich was frightened by such determination of the girl and asked what she wanted to do and then asked her to leave him alone. Alice immediately rushed into the room and explained that she heard some strange noise and decided to help the Lord. The scene she saw angered Alice and she confessed that she was disappointed in Mr. Lich, for she had not expected him in his present form to molest girls. At this point, the Demon Lord suddenly appeared and was also impressed by Lich's bed scene. Then the demoness, slyly smiling, said that she was happy to see everyone in good spirits and came to learn about the results of the study. The excited Lich did not expect such an appearance of the Demon Lord and asked what exactly brought her to his lab. The Demon Lord inhaled the aroma of fresh apple and explained that she did not want to waste precious time and came for the golem, which is in this laboratory. The Lich told of the attack of the golems and how they had all been destroyed so there were no usable specimens left. The Demon Lord replied thoughtfully that this was a real problem. But then the demoness laughed and demanded that the golem be quickly revived using resurrection magic. Lich explained that he could certainly use resurrection magic, but it was impossible without a physical body. But even if he managed to resurrect the golem, the creature was absolute junk that could only destroy everything in its path. Demoness admitted that she does not understand all these processes, but it seems to her that if you collect parts of different golems, you can resurrect the creature. Then the Demon Lord reminded the bony explorer that time is measured in money, and so it is not worth wasting it on idle talk. Although the undead are of course immortal and so they should not worry about time. The Demon Lord was talking very strangely as always and offered Lich a slice of apple. But at this moment, the lab master was discussing with Alice the possibility of resurrecting the golem. Although it was very dangerous, there was no other choice. After a while, the Lich prepared everything to try to resurrect the golem and began to use the resurrection spell. But as soon as the soulless creature opened its eyes, it activated the human and demon extermination program again and attacked the careless ghost. Alice and Lich were disappointed with the result, for it was a complete failure. But the Demon Lord destroyed the aggressive golem with a single movement, once again reminding them of its status and power. Then the demoness sincerely hugged Lich and called him a very good friend from whom she is delighted. At parting, the Demon Lord promised to look forward to new successes in research and advised his gaunt friend not to be discouraged and try his best. Lich was impressed as always by her strange behavior, but was glad she had left his lab. Lich stood for a long time watching the demoness as she went about her important business and remembered her words about the importance of research. Lich realized that if he did not meet the expectations of the Demon Lord, she would easily throw him out of the laboratory, and perhaps even destroy him just as she had done with the golem. Lich of course did not want to lose access to the lab and finish his brilliant research and fell into a real depression. The bony necromancer decided to come up with a study as urgently as possible that would bring the desired result and satisfy the overbearing demoness. Then Lich remembered in the last lesson on necromancy in which he discussed the topic of soul awakening, and how Annabelle demanded to take away the body of the hero. The idea came instantly, and the Necromancer decided to awaken the dead hero. Then unexpectedly to Alice and the little ghost, Lich confessed that he used to think about the equality of all souls in this world. But it turns out there are obvious differences between different souls. Lich explained that such souls are called awakened souls, and the souls of those 3 heroes were different from the others, so they should check out the new hero for the sake of research. Annabelle finally waited for her moment when Lich decided to fulfill her request and asked her to escort him to the dead hero. Annabelle felt completely superior to the surrendered Lich, and it made the scrawny researcher irritated. But after a while they found themselves a huge mountain of bodies, and it looked gruesome. The nastiest part was that this mountain of corpses was Lila sitting calmly. Lich asked the girl what she was doing here. Lila explained that she had come here to kill the dragons, but the golems attacked, and so she had to destroy the metal creatures along with the dragons. But after the golems were destroyed, she calmly slaughtered all the dragons. This was shocking news to Annabelle, and she wanted immediate revenge for her slain kin. Lich inquired about the hero's body, which was somewhere around here, and it would be nice if Layla could tell her where it was. Layla had no idea where the body of the long-dead hero was and advised to search among the pile of dead dragon bodies. Annabelle tried to break through and promised to kill Layla. Annabelle was able to break free from the Lich's grasp and rushed up the mountain of dead bodies. But Layla was ready for the attack and fended off her rival's first blow. Layla was able to throw Annabelle down, but still recognized that this girl was much stronger than her dead dragon kin. Annabelle was not going to give up and promised to avenge her clan. Annabelle used her dragon power and gained wings to attack her hated rival more strongly. Annabelle advised to treat the dragon clan with respect, because now Layla would feel the fury of the dragons. Within seconds, the 2 girls clashed in a desperate battle, and Layla was stunned by Annabelle's incredible strength. Both girls flew off in different directions as a result and felt a sharp pain in their bodies. Lich was delighted by such a show of strength and realized that dragons were considered some of the strongest creatures among demons. But Layla was not going to give up and announced just a normal draw, and then offered to continue the duel immediately. But Lich demanded that they stop fighting, for there was no time for that now. The bony researcher explained that if he didn't have the hero's body, he wouldn't be able to do the research. And if he couldn't do the research, the demon lord would be angry at him and the consequences could be disastrous. Layla was outraged and stated that at times like this, the Lich was really pissing her off and preventing her from showing her power. Layla continued to insist on a duel, but Lich refused to take part in it, because he was not going to waste time and feel the strongest blows of this aggressive girl again. Lich realized that Layla was just like Roselia, absolutely useless idiot, which causes only irritation. Then the bony researcher remembered that Layla was also an awakened human and she would be perfect for his new experiment. Lich suddenly agreed to fight the girl, but only on his terms. The bony trickster explained that if he won, Layla would allow him to study her body. Layla felt embarrassed and replied that if Lich wanted to touch her body so badly, he could just ask for it. Lich immediately explained that he was only interested in exploring, not her feminine charms at all. In the end, Layla agreed to the terms without getting into the details of the research and suggested that Lich try to beat her first. The bony researcher prepared for battle and thought about how he could defeat this strong rival. Layla, despite her natural stupidity, was well aware that her opponent was physically weak, but he had a very strong technique of controlling the dead, and the fact that he had a huge number of dragon race corpses around him created an advantage for him. Layla decided to destroy Lich before he started to resurrect the dead and fight with their help. Layla instantly attacked her opponent and tried to deliver a crushing blow, but unexpectedly she lost all her strength, and with it her consciousness. After a while, Lich sat quietly in his lab and wrote down important information. The bony investigator was also indignant that despite all his efforts he had not understood anything about the awakened souls. And if it goes on like this, the demon lord will definitely punish him and kicked out of this laboratory. But then Lich noticed Layla's awakening. The awakened girl could not understand how she could lose, because she did not remember anything after trying to attack Lich. The bony researcher would explain that he had merely used an instant death spell, and that had earned him the victory. Layla admitted that she was impressed by such strength of the Necromancer, for she expected him to hide cowardly behind resurrected corpses. Lich replied that he was saddened by such a low opinion of his abilities on Layla's part, but glad that he had been able to change her mind in the end. But then Lich said that measuring strength was a waste of time and a nonsense. After all, real scientific research is much more interesting. Layla did not comment on these words and remembered that the bony researcher had to examine her body. Then the unexpected girl pounced on Lich and started hugging him. This delighted Alice, for she considered it a display of sincere feelings. Lich did not understand what exactly Lila was doing and explained that he had no carotid artery, and therefore it was useless to strangle him. But Lila had the truest of light feelings and called Lich her first bony love, and then said goodbye and left the lab. Everyone present was shocked by such a scene, and Lich, if he had a face, would definitely blush with embarrassment. After a while, Lich was even able to resurrect all the dead members of the dragon race, who thanked him for such help. And even a little later, the scouts delivered a letter that Lila passed from the border of the territory of demons. In this case, the scouts complained that the girl beat them and ordered them to deliver the message faster. Lila reported her desire to travel for the sake of training and improving abilities. Eventually, the girl promised to become so strong that the Lich could no longer ignore her. Lila decided to reach an incredible level in her development and make the bony researcher forget about her experiments. Lich realized that the girl had taken the words he had said too closely when he complained about the lack of results in the research after examining her body. This upset Lich so much that if he had eyes, he would have cried at that moment. Of course, this state of the teacher was noticed by all of his students, but no one knew how to help him at this sad moment. But as it turned out, all this was just a fleeting display of feelings, and in a few minutes Lich started jumping for joy and said that today they would have a party. Lich was genuinely happy that he was able to get rid of Lila, and now it would save on food. The girls were shocked by such greediness on their teacher's part, because they really believed in the purity of his feelings. Meanwhile, something ominous was approaching and bad times were coming to humanity. Lich found out that the Awakened One was an exotic creature that occasionally appeared among humanity. Lich understood and resented it, for he could have learned much more about the Awakened One if he had investigated Lila earlier. But now the scrawny researcher wondered if any other companies of heroes existed, for he needed the corpse of such a person. But then Lich remembered that he himself was a former hero of the human race. Now of course he was a representative of the demonic world. As a result, the bony researcher tried to take a blood sample, because blood is the main source for important information. But how to do it Lich of course did not understand, because he had no blood vessels. Lanza decided to visit her teacher early in the morning and find out how the research was going. But she was shocked by what she saw, for Lich looked like an ordinary pile of bones. The girl rushed to find out what had happened to her favorite teacher, and Lich explained that he was just depressed and falling apart. Lich complained about the lack of results in his research and his unwillingness to continue doing anything. Lance listened quietly to the ramblings of his teacher, who began to tell him that it would have been nice if he had been born a beautiful girl. But at that moment the scrawny investigator felt strange, and then stopped hearing Lance's voice and eventually realized that he had teleported to the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord said that she had already learned of the complete lack of results from the investigation and wanted to find out in person. But Lich's condition was so feely that he couldn't explain the situation. The Demon Lord eventually decided that Lich's body was of great importance even in such a state, and did not demand to rush the results in the research. Then the main demoness was interested in a strange object, which as it turned out was a device that allows you to communicate with a person at a distance. Lanza explained that this device was given to him by Lich a few days ago, and they often communicate with the help of this object. At this point, Lich finally got rid of his depressive state and decided to continue his research. This time the bony researcher was interested in finding dead bodies. Alice reminded him that humans had been fighting each other for days, and it was a great source for obtaining dead bodies. Lich was surprised at the confrontation between humans, since usually humans fight demons. But Alice didn't know the details of the confrontation. Lich decided to take this great chance and get the right corpse, so he wasted no time and got ready to go. Lanza of course wanted to go along with her teacher. Once on the scene, Lanza was shocked at the scale and ferocity of the battle. But Lich couldn't find a suitable body and decided to wait for the survivors to die. Lanza, watching the scene, realized that this was not a war at all, but a real massacre that was taking place with extreme cruelty. But Lich explained that this is actually a regular war, and one should know that there is no such thing as a pure and fair war, and it is always a manifestation of cruelty and meanness. Then Lich noticed Roselia, who was in a terrible state and was trying her last efforts to protect the villagers. The hero girl was attacked by numerous opponents, but she tried to fight despite her injuries. Lance offered to immediately help and save Roselia, but Lich genuinely hated the wreck and explained that he would take great pleasure in preferring to see her die. Lancer reminded that Lich was actually human and should protect people. The bony explorer disagreed and advised him to take a close look at his appearance. The villagers asked Roselia to save herself and not die for them, but the girl hero stated that her mission was to protect her followers even at the cost of her own life. Roselia continued to repel the constant attacks, but eventually I realized that such a number of enemies would not allow her to cope with the mission. But the Lich intervened in the situation and destroyed many enemies at once, and then stood up for Roselia and the rest of the villagers. The bony savior said that if you kill, you should kill more cleanly, and he was ready to teach this art to all comers. Lanza marveled at her teacher's heroism, while Roselia and the locals were shocked at the appearance of such a protector. Roselia explained that she didn't understand at all what Lich was talking about, but despite that she thanked him for helping her in her time of need. She also explained that she still didn't recognize Lich's existence, but she admired his act of saving the faithful people. Lich replied that he had no intention of saving Roselia's life at all, but simply decided that it would be a shame to let her rare soul and body die unnecessarily. After all, souls are an important resource of necromancy, and it is a necromancer's duty to use souls to their advantage. Therefore, as the most brilliant necromancer, he must act with calculation and always remember the importance of his research. Lich admitted that he didn't want to meet Roselia at all, but he still had to do it. After all, if Roselia died for nothing, it would be a real disaster for him as a necromancer. That said, the scrawny researcher realized that Roselia could be a huge problem and could even destroy him if he wanted to, and so he had to be careful with her. Roselia listened to Lich carefully and said that apparently they were really incompatible. Lich asked why she said that, but instead of answering, the girl demanded Lich to become ashes before her righteous faith. But Lich was not going to agree with Roselia. I reminded the girl that all her religion is a complete nonsense, the influence of which he absolutely does not recognize. Roselia decided not to allow her religion to be insulted and tried to attack Lich, but the bony investigator skillfully used a binding spell and said rival's movement. Roselia could not cope with the magical fetters, and the Lich explained that he had taken possession of the girl's soul, and now she would pay for her foolishness. Lance asked her teacher not to be cruel, but Lich promised only to talk to Roselia about religion. Roselia said that all of Lich's doubts about her religion were due to the fact that he was a representative of the demonic world. But the scrawny researcher explained that Helga, who served all the foolish people, should have been more careful to educate her followers. Lich told of how in ancient times there were two gods. One god was the day god and the other was the night god. And humans are actually the dependents of humanity and worshippers of the day god. And demons always depended on the night god and fought fiercely against the human race. That was the whole reason for the constant discord between the human and demonic peoples. Roselia barked back. Why even bother telling how it all started? After all, she had heard this story from early childhood and there was nothing secret about it. But Lich watched his rival carefully and decided to ask her something important. The bony researcher asked why. In that case, necromancy was hated in the human religion. Roselia explained that this vile science contradicts the laws of nature, because thanks to necromancy they turn the dead into undead and capture other people's souls, and this is terrible and sinful. Lich explained that the point was that humans are humans, and demons remain demons. But a human can't become a demon after being resurrected. And did Roselia ever see the moment of transformation of an ordinary person into the undead? The girl thought about it and admitted that she had never personally witnessed such a thing. But in any case, the teachings of the necromancy cult were a crime and an insult to humans. But the Lich stated that there was really no reason for Roselia to become an enemy to the necromancer, and now Roselia herself was a Lich. The girl was completely confused about the whole story and the various theories of the universe, and so she asked to be left alone, for she could not realize the previously inaccessible things. Roselia began to remember all the manifestations of necromancy, and gradually some things became clear to her. Lich decided to end the conversation and wished the girl good night, but Roselia asked him to stop and listen to her. Roselia confessed that she had witnessed the hoarding of death, and once there was a hero in her squad who was a necromancer. Roselia said that the guy was a real glutton and he was feared by the supply troops who didn't have time to bring in food. And when the supply troops found out about his death, they made a real feast and celebrated the event for several days. Lich was shocked by such meanness on the part of people, because he had never had any complaints about food. Roselia already of course guessed that this man was in front of her and called Lich a real traitor who had defected to the side of the demon lord's army. The girl started laughing quietly, and this irritated the former hero. Lich decided to return home immediately and ordered Lance to follow him. The bony explorer noticed Roselia's changed state and didn't want to keep looking at it. The girl felt an incredible power in her hands and was able to break free from the magical shackles. Lich was shocked by what was happening, and Roselia started accusing Lich of horrible crimes with the help of necromancy. Roselia started talking in a very strange voice, admitting that she had once done something terrible. and the Necromancer was a member of the hero's team. But the man ended up losing himself to the Lich in the demon world, and it all goes against common sense. Roselia was able to completely break the magical shackles and felt freedom. After her release, Roselia declared that the Lich was the only being she was going to immediately destroy. The bony researcher was shocked by the girl's transformation and decided that it was most likely the so-called power of faith. Lich didn't know how dangerous Roselia was now, but he had a sense of danger. Lich had no idea how strong Roselia was now, for he had never seen such a transformation through faith before. It was like some kind of awakening, but without the influence of necromancy. Roselia felt confident and asked her opponent if he now felt fear of the divine power. Lich admired such confidence and wanted to try to experiment on Roselia at all costs. Lich was delighted with Roselia's transformation and rushed to ask her to show off all of her powers. Lance and Roselia were both surprised by Lich's reaction, for he had stopped being aggressive for some reason. The bony researcher began to ask Roselia what had happened to her, and how she had been able to change her hair and eyes, and he was also interested in the strange green flame. Lance didn't understand what exactly was going on, for she didn't recognize her teacher. The Lich even tried to collect Roselia's aura in a vial and drink it, but it did nothing and only destroyed part of his head. The girl ordered the Lich not to touch her so carelessly, and then pushed the skeleton away hard. But the Lich was determined not to give up, for he had to achieve his main goal. After a few seconds, the bony explorer felt a strange pain. I couldn't believe it because the Lich couldn't feel pain. Lanza started to worry about her teacher and asked what was happening to him. Roselia enjoyed this moment and asked her opponent how it felt to be burned by divine mercy. But Lich quickly dealt with the negative influence and smugly declared that he was fine. Lanza didn't believe her teacher, for his legs looked too unnatural. Lich didn't really understand what was happening to him, for he felt a strange pain that felt like it was burning the marrow out of his bones. Lich asked Roselia how this was possible, since she had just awakened and already possessed such powerful magic. But the girl replied that it wasn't magic at all, but something else. She explained that I was added to her divine power of faith, for she sincerely believes in a god who protects his followers. But Lich again insisted on his own and said that there is no such thing as belief in a god, and it is only a fiction to manipulate people. Roselia did not want to hear the words that desecrate her religion and decided to immediately destroy the representative of the demonic world, which betrayed the human race. Lich decided that if the girl would attack him with magic, the best solution would be to create magical reflective bills. But as it turned out, Roselia did not attack with magic, but delivered a powerful blow with her hand, which instantly destroyed Lich's reflective shields. Stunned by the powerful blow, Lich realized that it was all too unscientific, but in any case it wasn't a physical or magical attribute. And perhaps Roselia possesses some new attribute related to her faith. But Roselia was determined to destroy the bony researcher and promised him a disappointing ending. Lanza could no longer calmly watch the destruction of her teacher and demanded that it stop immediately, then reminded Roselia that she was one of them. Lanza explained that Lich hadn't actually betrayed humanity. She was completely sure of it and had heard about it personally. You also need to know about the fact that this brave necromancer was abandoned by his best friends. The heroes never wanted to help him, though of course in the eyes of others he is a hero for betraying and abandoning his comrades. Lich was surprised to hear the whole truth at this point and waited for the effect of this revelation. Roselia revealed that the hero had told her and Lila of his plans from the beginning. But Lila as always showed stupidity and did not understand anything from his words. Lich of course agreed, because he also thought Lila was a very stupid girl. Roselia began to argue with Lich and demanded that he shut up immediately, and then began to press on his skull with force. Lich demanded that her foot be removed, as his skull was about to break and was cracking like a watermelon. Roselia declared that it was all a truth-seeking experiment, and Lich was always an eyesore who played with her soul at any convenient time. But one couldn't be sure that it had turned out to be a good lesson from God. Roselia admitted that the whole thing was just scary and insensitive, and she didn't like it at all. So the whole thing could be called a personal grudge. Lancia are screaming that not all demons are as evil as Roselia thinks they are. But the Holy Maiden ordered the girl immediately shut up, because she was just deceived by demons, are the eternal enemies of mankind. And when it's all over, then maybe Lancia will get her chance to return to her people and remain a good person. Roselia promised to grant Lich the last favor, and if there were any arguments now, she was willing to hear them. But the scrawny researcher decided not to resist or change Roselia's mind, but only offered to start what she wanted to do. Lance was frightened. I did not want to see the death of her favorite teacher. Roselia didn't waste any time and increased the pressure with her foot so much that after a few seconds there was a nasty pop from her skull exploding. Lance began to scream and cry, grieving for the dead Lich. Roselia, on the other hand, declared that now her unclean soul was cleansed again, and now she was ready to deal with the cursed golems. But suddenly a familiar voice was heard behind her, asking her to take her time and finish all her business here. As it turned out, a new Lich had been born, who had not changed at all in appearance, but was now more confident in his abilities. Lich explained to Roselia that she was mistaken and destroyed only a trivial copy, and he himself is not going to run away. Lance was completely confused about what was going on and didn't realize whose skull fragments she was holding in her hands. Lich stated that he had the ability to come back an infinite number of times, and his body can be broken into pieces, but as long as his soul is not crushed he will always rise again. And how Roselia, who is confident in her divine faith, could not defeat the very ordinary Lich. The Lich once again took pleasure in stating that all this religious faith is just plain lies for stupid people. Roselia couldn't contain her emotions any longer and promised to destroy Lich immediately. Such emotional behavior only amused the bony researcher, and he enjoyed the girl's rage. Then Lich confessed that in his past life he hated Roselia, and every time he wanted to invite her out to lunch or play, as well as during their training together, he was annoyed by it all. After all, he was just trying to take care of his comrades and not show his sincere emotions. But Roselia began to accuse Lich of brazenly trying to steal her data, and it was creepy to feel the effects of necromancy, especially since he was always trying to maintain his fitness at her expense. Lich continued laughing and replied that it was all necessary for efficient work and he was indeed using it to his advantage. Roselia lunged forward and called Lich an insensitive lowlife who mocked other people's beliefs. Lich again tried to fend off Roselia's crushing blow, and replied that the problem was that she herself was trying to impose her silly beliefs on everyone else. Lich explained that he only needed samples for research and Roselia could provide them and get out. But the girl didn't want to listen to her opponent and decided to destroy the Lich. While the battle was going on, a huge golem appeared nearby, working on a program to destroy all living things. This huge soulless creature detected auras exceeding the threshold and determined the highest level of danger. After that, the program of elimination of people and demons was activated and the golem continued its movement. This time we had to confront the huge will of Lich and Roselia by joint efforts, and they attacked the soulless creature, but it had almost no effect on the progress of the golem. After several similar joint attacks still managed to defeat the huge golem. Lance felt like a real idiot at this point, because she had no influence on what was happening and was just a bystander. Unexpectedly for the girl, there were many small golems, which behaved aggressively and rebooted the reactor system of the main golem. After that, the self-destruct process of the huge golem was started and the countdown began. The situation was escalating every second and Lance immediately informed Lich and Roselia. The former reacted to Lance's danger and shouted to evacuate the civilians to a safe distance immediately. Seconds were running out very quickly and everyone who could ran as fast as they could behind Lance, trying to get as far away from the epicenter of the explosion as possible. At the end of the report there was a terrifying explosion that could be compared to a real earthquake. Huge amounts of dust and rocks flew up into the air and mixed with the fiery flash. Lich found himself in the very epicenter of the explosion, and there was no way he could survive in this fiery hell. Alice felt a large explosion and of course immediately came to the scene. At the site of the explosion was a solid wasteland, in the middle of which there was no survivor. Alice was still hoping for a happy rescue of her master, but at that moment someone's hand appeared from a deep hole nearby. Lance spat and sneezed from the acrid dust, greedily inhaled fresh air and tried to get to the surface. The small obedient ghost immediately rushed to help the young girl and the other survivors. Alice inquired about the fate of the scrawny explorer, but Lance sadly showed the remaining piece from the teacher's cloak and explained that it was all that was left of Lich. This became the most tragic moment and everyone sincerely grieved and cried, regretting Lich's death. Of course, everyone realized that it was impossible to survive the terrible explosion. But there was still hope in everyone's heart that they would be able to see the greedy Lich again and hear his stupid phrases.